Picture this, it's 2021, during the UK lockdowns. You're walking alone after 9 p.m., heading home from a friend's place. A police officer stops you, and you're understandably nervous. It's against the rules to be out. You prepare to explain yourself, hoping for a warning at most. What you don't expect, what you could never expect, is to be assaulted and murdered by the very officer who is supposed to protect you. That horrifying reality is what happened to 33-year-old Sarah Everard. Trusting a police officer in such a situation feels natural, doesn't it? Sarah surely felt the same. But this betrayal of trust had devastating consequences, not just for her, but for the faith many had in law enforcement. After Sarah's murder, 47% of women in the UK reported losing trust in the police. Her tragic death exposed the dark truth that even those meant to safeguard us can harbor predators within their ranks. Sarah Everard was born in June 1987 to Sue and Jeremy Everard, the youngest of 3 siblings, with an older sister, Katie, and a brother, James. In 2005, she began studying at Durham University, graduating in 2008 before moving to London to work in marketing. At the time of the case, Sarah lived in the Brixton Hill area and worked as a marketing executive at a digital media agency. She was known for her kindness and dependability. Her friend Rose described Sarah as a rock of support during tough times, especially when Rose lost her mother. By 2021, Sarah, like everyone else, was navigating the challenges of pandemic life. Lockdowns weighed heavily on her, as they did on so many. She, too, craved normalcy and connection. But no one could foresee that a seemingly ordinary evening in March would alter everything, leaving a community reeling in the aftermath. On March 3, 2021, Sarah decided to meet her friend Rose for a much-needed break from the isolation of lockdown. Rose lived on Lewin Road, near Clapham Junction, just west of Clapham Common. After a relaxing evening, Sarah left Rose's home around 9 p.m. CCTV captured her walking through Brixton Road Junction. Phone records showed she called her boyfriend, Josh, making plans to meet him the next day. Their call lasted about 15 minutes. At 9:28 p.m., a doorbell camera recorded Sarah walking on Pointers Road toward home, and a police dashcam spotted her 4 minutes later. The following morning, everything took a troubling turn. Josh couldn't reach Sarah despite their plans to meet, and she also failed to attend a virtual work meeting. By 8 p.m. on March 4th, with no word from Sarah and mounting concern, Josh reported her missing. The investigation began immediately. Police scoured surveillance footage near Sarah's home, but when they checked cameras positioned right across her street, there was no sign of Sarah. Everyone began to fear the worst. Something terrible must have happened to Sarah, as it was now clear she hadn't made it home. Her family traveled to London, putting up posters and seeking any information that could lead to her whereabouts. Sarah wasn't the type to vanish without a trace. According to Rose, there was nothing unusual about her behavior that evening. She seemed normal and even upbeat, as much as one could be during the difficult lockdowns. Investigators noted that the path Sarah had taken was fairly isolated, but it was a route she often walked. Sarah was an active individual who preferred walking over other forms of transport when possible. The journey from Rose's house to her own was about 50 minutes, but the path was well lit. Despite lockdown restrictions, Sarah felt safe enough to make the walk rather than calling for a taxi. At first, detectives were completely stumped. They had no clear idea where Sarah could be. But a key lead soon emerged: CCTV footage from a passing bus. The footage captured Sarah walking down Pointers Road, but she wasn't alone. A man was with her, and a white vehicle was parked nearby with its hazard lights on. Moments later, a dashcam from another car recorded the same vehicle at 9:38 p.m., this time with both doors open. This was a breakthrough. The police now had to identify the man in the footage, clearly the last person seen with Sarah. Their search led to a major clue. The white Vauxhall Crossland had been rented from a car hire company in Dover, Kent, about a 2-hour drive from London. The car had been rented by a man named Wayne Couzens. But Wayne wasn't just any man. He was a serving officer with the Metropolitan Police. The revelation raised more troubling questions. Why was Wayne with Sarah that evening? Was she in danger? And where was she now? To understand what happened, we need to know more about Wayne Couzens. Born in 1972, Wayne initially worked as a mechanic in his family's garage. He later joined the Territorial Army as a private, but his military career ended when he failed to meet training requirements. Despite multiple failed attempts to become a police officer, he was finally accepted into the Kent Police in June 2006 after leaving the army. What's concerning is how Wayne was able to join the police force in the first place. His recruitment was riddled with red flags. He hadn't undergone proper vetting during the hiring process, and he hadn't completed the mandatory 2-year probation period required for metropolitan police officers. Despite this, by 2020, Wayne had advanced to a role in the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch, responsible for safeguarding government properties in the UK. Wayne, a 43-year-old father of 2, was inexperienced, inadequately trained, and had no business holding such a critical position. Yet, here he was, working in law enforcement, and now a suspect in Sarah's disappearance. Let's factor in the added stress of police work. But back to the real question. What was Wayne doing on the night of March 3rd, and how did Sarah end up crossing paths with a police officer? The authorities were asking the same thing, and the only way to get answers was by questioning Wayne. The police went to DOA and arrested him on suspicion of kidnapping Sarah. Initially, Wayne claimed he didn't know who Sarah was, but things quickly took a bizarre turn. After pretending to have no knowledge of her for a few minutes, he concocted a story about a gang forcing him to kidnap Sarah. According to him, the gang had threatened to harm his family unless he complied. As he was struggling financially, they supposedly promised him money in exchange for delivering Sarah to them. This story immediately raised suspicion. Wayne's explanation seemed implausible, and investigators began digging deeper. His charges escalated from kidnapping to murder, even though Sarah's body hadn't been found yet. What triggered this shift in charges was a closer look at Wayne's activities on the night of Sarah's disappearance. On March 3rd, Wayne left London just hours after Sarah vanished. He returned the rental car, a white Vauxhall Crossland, at 8:30 a.m. on March 4th. The timing seemed calculated. Wayne had rented the car only for the period during which Sarah went missing, returning it almost immediately after she was reported missing. The investigation came to a grim conclusion on March 10th. Instead of finding Sarah safe and alive, the police uncovered something devastating for her family and the entire UK. Their search led them to Hodes Wood, an area near Ashford, where Wayne happened to own a small plot of land. Just 10 yards from his property, officers discovered a large bag in a shallow pond. Inside were human remains. 2 days later, on March 12th, dental records confirmed the remains were those of 33-year-old Sarah Everard. An autopsy at William Harvey Hospital revealed that Sarah had died from neck compression, likely caused by a police belt. Heartbreakingly, there were also indications she may have been assaulted. Piecing together the timeline of events from phone data, CCTV footage, and location tracking, the police reconstructed what happened that night. Wayne had finished a 12-hour shift at 7 a.m. on March 3rd and picked up the rental car at 4:45 p.m. that evening. Between 8 p.m. and 9:23 p.m., he was seen buying hair ties at a Tesco in West London. At 9:34 p.m., CCTV footage captured him at Pointers Road, where he encountered Sarah. It's believed that Wayne, though off-duty, used his badge to stop Sarah as she walked home. He showed her his identification, handcuffed her, and loaded her into the car, pretending to arrest her for violating lockdown restrictions. Sarah, thinking she was in legitimate trouble, complied without resistance. The footage showed her appearing calm, likely believing she was being taken to a police station. Tragically, Wayne's real intentions were far more sinister. After placing Sarah in the car, which was not a police vehicle, he drove off, beginning a horrifying chain of events that would end in her murder. On March 4th, Wayne drove to Kent and transferred Sarah into his personal car. Between 11:53 a.m. and 12:57 p.m., his phone pinged in Shepherd's Well, a location believed to be where Wayne revealed his horrifying intentions and began abusing Sarah. It's unimaginable what she must have endured, especially at the hands of someone sworn to protect. After committing these horrific acts, Wayne was seen at 2:34 a.m. buying drinks at a gas station. Shortly after, he strangled Sarah using his police belt, ending her life. The senselessness of his actions is staggering. Having already exploited her, he could have let her go, but he chose not to. Wayne was later captured on CCTV between 3:22 and 6:32 a.m. at Hodes Wood in Ashford. At 8:26 a.m., he returned the rental car, having driven over 300 miles. By 9:21 a.m., Wayne likely disposed of Sarah's phone by throwing it into a watercourse in Sandwich, Kent. This was when Sarah's phone became unreachable and her boyfriend's calls failed to connect. On March 5th, Wayne was seen at a BP gas station in Whitfield purchasing a can of gasoline. At 12:37 p.m., he returned to Hoad Wood and burned Sarah's body inside an old refrigerator. But his actions didn't stop there. At 1:47 p.m., he was captured buying large plastic bags. On March 7th, he returned to Hoad Wood to dispose of Sarah's remains in a pond. The plastic bags found at the scene matched those he had purchased in the days prior. In the days following, Wayne's behavior became increasingly suspicious. He told colleagues he was feeling stressed and no longer wanted to carry a firearm. On March 7th, he took leave from work, claiming illness, and upon his return, he handed in his police equipment, including the belt and handcuffs used to restrain and kill Sarah. At the time, no one realized the sinister connection between these items and Sarah's murder. A man sworn to protect civilians had become a predator, but why? Even the most heinous killers often have motives, yet Wayne's actions appeared random and opportunistic. Did he know Sarah, or was she tragically in the wrong place at the wrong time? Court proceedings uncovered disturbing details about Wayne's history. When arrested at his home in Deal, he had wiped his phone data just 40 minutes before police arrived. After his second arrest on March 11th, Wayne was hospitalized twice for self-inflicted head injuries, though the reasons remain unclear. On March 12th, he was officially charged with kidnapping and murder, and the next day, he appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court before being held at Belmarsh Prison. Following his arrest, more shocking revelations came to light. Wayne had a documented history of violent and inappropriate behavior. He had been charged with 4 counts of indecent exposure, including one incident just days before Sarah's murder. In 2018, he had assaulted a drag worker in a pub. Furthermore, Wayne and 2 fellow officers, Jonathan Cobbin and Joel Borders, had shared racist, misogynistic, and homophobic messages in a WhatsApp group. This vile behavior painted a picture of a man whose abuses of power and disregard for others went unchecked for far too long. The chilling reality was that even media personnel weren't immune from violent individuals like Wayne, a man who used his position of trust to prey on an innocent victim. Emma B., a former BBC Radio and Heart 106.2 presenter, shared her own harrowing encounter with Wayne, dating back to 2008. She recounted how he indecently exposed himself to her in a dark alley in Greenwich, 13 years before Sarah's tragic attack. When Emma attempted to report the incident at a police station, the officers dismissed her claims and laughed at her. Wayne's inappropriate behavior wasn't an isolated issue. It was widely known among his colleagues, who even gave him a crude nickname reflecting how uncomfortable he made women feel. Shockingly, these co-workers, also police officers, did nothing to address his behavior. Instead, they normalized it, turning a blind eye to a predator within their ranks. With these revelations now public, Wayne's sinister nature was undeniable. On June 8, 2021, he pleaded guilty to the assault and murder of Sarah Everard, admitting the attack was random and that he had no prior connection to her. The randomness of his crime made it all the more horrifying, as Wayne, a police officer, someone expected to protect others, was actively searching for a victim to prey upon. Wayne's sentencing took place on September 29, 2021. Despite his defense attorney, Jim Sturman QC, arguing for life imprisonment with parole, Lord Justice Fulford sentenced him to life in prison with a whole life order. This is the harshest penalty in the UK, ensuring the convict remains behind bars for the rest of their life with no possibility of release. Wayne became the first individual in UK history to receive such a sentence for the single murder of a civilian, underscoring the gravity of his crimes and the court's determination to keep him off the streets. In October 2022, Wayne attempted to appeal his conviction, but the Court of Appeal quickly denied it. Then, in April 2023, it emerged that Wayne was still entitled to a police pension of £7,000 per year. However, the Mayor of London swiftly intervened, putting an end to this. While Wayne might retain some pre-existing pension rights, further efforts are underway to strip him of these benefits entirely. Wayne's former colleagues, Jonathan Cobbin and Joel Borders, who were implicated in sharing offensive messages in a WhatsApp group, also faced justice. Both were jailed for their conduct, signaling accountability for their complicity in creating a toxic and misogynistic environment. Sarah Everard's tragic case sent shockwaves across the UK and beyond, sparking outrage among men and women alike. It also exposed systemic failures and abuses of power within the police force, leading to widespread mistrust. Women, both in the public and in government, lost faith in an institution meant to ensure their safety. One such example of this mistrust was seen during the vigil held for Sarah at Clapham Common. Instead of allowing people to grieve peacefully, the police's response only further inflamed public anger and highlighted their lack of sensitivity and accountability. On March 13, 2021, hundreds of people, including Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, gathered to honor Sarah Everard at a vigil in Clapham Common. The area was adorned with flowers and heartfelt messages of love and support for Sarah's family. Attendees also listened to speeches from Sisters Uncut, a British feminist group. However, the peaceful gathering soon descended into chaos when police intervened, citing lockdown violations. 4 arrests were made, flowers were trampled, and attendees were subdued and handcuffed. The scene quickly spiraled into a mess, with reports of some police officers being assaulted as well. 2 years later, on September 14, 2023, the Metropolitan Police issued a formal apology for their actions that night and paid substantial damages. The incident had sparked a wave of vigils across the UK, with events held in cities like Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Leeds, Liverpool, Nottingham, and Sheffield. Sarah's death, coupled with the police's conduct at the vigil, placed law enforcement under intense public scrutiny. They faced criticism for both their failure to prevent Sarah's murder and their heavy-handed response to those mourning her loss. As if this wasn't bad enough, the Metropolitan Police drew further outrage by offering tone-deaf advice to women on how to protect themselves. Officials suggested that women should avoid going out at night and yell for help if approached by a lone officer. Statements that many saw as a refusal to address systemic issues within the police force. It was as if they were placing the burden of safety on women, implying it was their responsibility to avoid becoming victims rather than tackling the root causes of these crimes. One of the most egregious remarks came from Philip Allott, the Fire and Crime Commissioner, who suggested that women needed to be streetwise and know their rights regarding arrests. His comments prompted a vote of no confidence, leading to his resignation in October 2021. These dismissive attitudes underscored the lack of accountability and the failure to implement meaningful changes to prevent such tragedies from happening again. For Sarah Everard, walking home alone on what should have been an ordinary evening turned into a nightmare. Her life was cruelly taken, and the system that should have protected her failed her at every turn. While Wayne Couzens is now behind bars, it's difficult to ignore how preventable her death might have been if proper safeguards and vetting had been in place within the police force. The most disheartening part of this case is the apparent lack of meaningful progress. Officials seem more interested in addressing the symptoms rather than the root causes of the problem. Instead of telling women to stay home or yell for help, real solutions should focus on systemic reforms, stricter hiring protocols, thorough vetting of officers, and stronger measures to ensure accountability within law enforcement. While these changes might not solve everything, they represent a step toward rebuilding trust and making communities safer. Sarah Everard's tragic death highlights the urgent need for action, not platitudes. Her family's grief, compounded by the systemic failures that allowed her killer to operate unchecked, is a painful reminder of how much work remains to be done. Despite the public outcry and heightened awareness, tangible change still feels elusive, leaving many to question whether Sarah's life was taken in vain. If you have enjoyed the video, then make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out any other latest videos.